7 months had passed without a single drop of rain falling on this land. The sun rose each morning, not to warm, but to scorch. It hung over the prairie like a death sentence, draining the last vestiges of moisture from every clod of earth, every blade of grass. There were no more rains, only the heat, the red dust, and a suffocating silence. The once clear rivers were now just sand and dust. Their riverbeds cracked like scars on the earth. The grass had withered to a burnt yellow, and food had dwindled. Here, water is not just more precious than gold. It is the boundary between life and death. When the last water source disappears, the animals have no choice. They must leave their familiar land, traveling hundreds of kilometers through the intense heat in search of survival. Some will reach a place with green grass. Others will collapse along the way. And from that moment, the greatest struggle for survival of the year begins. The leopard had been starving for many days. But not every hunt is successful. The African savanna in the dry season. Adapt or perish. As the African sun rises above the horizon, the savanna no longer awakens to its old rhythm. The dry season has changed everything. Not just the color of the grasslands, not just the flow of the rivers, but the way each creature must survive each day. Trees shed their leaves to retain the last of their water. Herbivores can no longer graze on dwindling land. They must venture further, searching for remaining patches of grass and accept stepping out of places that were once safe. As prey weakens, predators change. They no longer hunt with haste. They wait longer. They hide more. And choose the timing more precisely, because during the dry season, a failed hunt also represents a portion of energy that cannot be recovered. On the vast steppe, the dry season is more than just weather. It is an invisible force, compelling all species to adapt. Trees must conserve water. Prey must move. Predators must be patient. And the entire ecosystem must operate on a more fragile boundary than ever before. Each species plays a role. Every behavior affects the others. If one link breaks, the balance of the steppe can begin to crumble. And during the dry season, the first link to be stretched is always water. When water is reduced to only a few shallow pools, the vast steppe suddenly shrinks around its last remaining points of life. Rivers dry up, streams fall silent. Streaks of muddy water remain amidst the scorched grasslands, like the last islands of life seen from above. And all the trails lead there. Water scarcity doesn't just make the steppe drier, it makes it more crowded. Spectacles that used to live far apart are now forced into one place. Elephants, buffalo, zebras, wild antelopes, herds of tiny gazelles. They all need the same thing, in the same place, at the same time. And where all life converges, the final waterhole becomes a place of competition, tension, and danger. Here, a cold rule speaks. Body size determines access. An elephant steps straight into the water, using its massive size to claim the best spot. A herd of buffalo rushes down the muddy bank, butting heads for space. They were numerous, strong, and unyielding. The smaller antelopes could only wait on the outer edge, where the muddy ground bore the footprints of a day's struggle. The young, the old, the weak were pushed to the periphery. They drank last, drank less, and sometimes had to duck down at the most critical moment. For the watering hole never belonged solely to those who came to drink. A little further away, hidden among the dry yellow grass, a lion was watching. It didn't need to chase. It just needed to wait. The scarcity of water had done the most difficult thing for the predator, cornering its prey. The weaker animals understood this. To survive, many species had to change their watering times, retreating to the twilight hours. Or sneaking into the water after the larger animals had left. Trading the safety of daytime to avoid both predators and those stronger than themselves. Each day, the waterhole dries up further. Each day, the encirclement tightens. But not all herds can wait forever. When the last water source is no longer sufficient for everyone, some species have only one choice: to leave. And on that parched savanna, leaving is not giving up. It is the only way to survive. And in the midst of the dry season, one of the clearest manifestations of that adaptation is migration. Herds of wildebeest begin to move. Hundreds of thousands of individuals follow one another, stretching to the horizon. Like a living river flowing across the African savanna. They are not as agile as gazelles, not as graceful as zebras, but they have endurance, a strong herd instinct, and heavy, curved horns, capable of facing a land that is never easy to live in. The instinct for survival compels them to keep going. To areas where there is still green grass. To areas where there is still fresh water. That journey is not a choice. It is a command of nature, guided by migratory memories repeated through countless generations. and by the ability to sense rain from afar. But in every migration, the smallest individuals always pay the price first. The dry season leaves the clearest marks on tiny bodies. An adult can endure hunger longer, travel further, and read danger signals in the wind. But the young must learn it all at once amidst red dust, scorching sun, and never-ending movements. They don't get to choose when they are born. And if they open their eyes in the dry season, every step is a test of survival. When the herd is forced to travel further in search of water, distance becomes the first enemy of the new generation. The dwindling food supply exhausts the mothers more quickly, and as their bodies run out of energy, the milk supply also diminishes. The young are too small to keep up with the herd's rhythm, but the herd cannot slow down for anyone. For the young, the herd is more than just family. It is their only shield from death. But that shield only protects those who can keep up. Just one moment of weakness, one inability to move through the dry grass, one moment of stopping too long due to heat and thirst, and the distance between them and their mother widens. From that moment, they begin to lose their greatest advantage, the protection of the herd. And that is precisely what every predator seeks. Young, weak individuals and those separated from the group are often the first targets. Not because they are more valuable, but because they are more vulnerable. During the dry season, the line between life and death for a young, weak creature is sometimes summed up in a single misstep. The dry season is merciless to everyone. But it is most cruel to those who haven't yet grown up. For on the savannah, every sign of weakness is met with someone waiting to see it. Amidst the tall, crisp grass, the lion lies pressed close to the ground. Its sandy coat helps it almost blend into the savannah. It doesn't need to charge into the pack. It just waits for a moment, a slip, a slowdown, an individual separating from the movement. And when that happens, it's all over in seconds. For the lion, it's a reward for patience during the famine. For the wildebeest herd, it's a cruel reminder that migration is never safe. But they couldn't stop. There was no turning back. The entire pride had to keep moving forward, leaving death behind. As they had done throughout thousands of years of evolution. On the African savanna, the journey to survival always comes with a price. But the dry season doesn't just test the prey. It tests the hunters as well. Lions stand at the top of the food chain. But that power doesn't save them from thirst, hunger, and the prolonged heat. This is when their throne is most severely challenged. The harsh truth is that in many regions, most lion cubs won't live long enough to see the first rains of the season. When herds migrate far in search of water, the mother lion faces a difficult choice. Leave her cubs to hunt, or stay and share their hunger. But thirst isn't the only danger. As the water recedes, territories are squeezed closer together. Encounters between prides become more intense. And sometimes turn into life or death battles around the last remaining water sources. Now, all of Africa has only about 20,000 wild lions left. Each dry season takes away more hope from this proud animal, leaving behind skeletons exposed to the sun. King of the savanna, but even the king must bow before the dry season. And when a life falls, the savanna doesn't let it rest. Under the scorching sun, a corpse can quickly become a source of disease, contaminating the few remaining water sources and threatening even those still trying to survive. Therefore, nature needs cleaners. From the pale blue sky, black dots begin to swirl. Vultures have detected the first signal. With their long, wide wings, they glide over hot air currents for hours with almost no flapping. Their keen eyesight allows them to spot carcasses from a great distance. And when one begins to descend, the others immediately understand that there is food on the ground. But the vulture's ugly appearance is a perfect design. Their bare heads and necks allow them to burrow deep into carcasses without their feathers trapping blood, dirt, and bacteria. Inside their bodies, powerful digestive juices help them process things that could infect other species. They don't just eat carcasses, they neutralize a threat. After the vultures, the marabou stork emerges as the final workers of the savanna. Tall, slow-moving, with strong beaks, they process the remnants that other species ignore: skin, tendons, small bone fragments, and anything else that can still be utilized. Not beautiful, not glamorous, but necessary. In the dry season, when water is scarce and disease can spread rapidly, scavengers keep the ground from being piled high with decay. They clean up the end of a life so that the rest of the ecosystem can continue to function. No roar, no hunt. Only wings circling in the sun, and a silent task upon which the entire steppe depends. Here, death is not the end. It is the raw material for the next life cycle. Because in the dry season, no nutrients are wasted. When familiar food disappears, the steppe begins to sort species in a different way. In the rainy season, food is easier to find. Young grass grows everywhere, soft leaves cover branches, and fruits and seeds fall to the ground. But when the dry season tightens, all of that disappears, one by one. The green grass withers into dry straw, leaves fall to retain water, and once abundant food sources become scarce. At this point, the savanna poses a life or death question to each species. When what sustains you is gone, what will you eat to survive? Species accustomed to a single food source are in grave danger, but those that adapt their diet find opportunity where nothing else seems to exist. An elephant doesn't give up when the grass dries up. It uses its trunk and tusks to strip bark from trees, break off dry branches, utilizing even the tough leaves and the little moisture remaining in the trunk. A warthog kneels on its front legs, using its snout to dig through the hard soil to find tubers and roots hidden deep beneath. For a ground squirrel, a meal might lie in a small crevice in the rocks, insects, spiders, or a scorpion hidden beneath the sand. And when live prey becomes scarce, hyenas take advantage of what others leave behind. Crushing bones with their strong jaws to extract the last vestiges of nutrition from a seemingly depleted skeleton. This is the true meaning of adaptation. It's not just about going further to find food. It's about accepting that eating ordinary things is never the first choice. In the dry season, an underground root, an insect in a rock crevice, or a piece of dry bark can be the line between life and death. But for these tiny creatures, finding food isn't enough. They also have to survive long enough to eat it. A small animal stands upright on its hind legs, motionless in the scorching heat. Its eyes scan the sky. It's the eyes of the pack. This is a ground squirrel, a tiny inhabitant of the arid lands on the edge of the African savanna. Sandy soil, scorching sun, sparse vegetation. Its small body and light brown fur help it blend into the bright sand. Standing alone, it has almost nothing to defend itself with. But ground squirrels don't live alone. The pack is tightly bound, digging deep burrows to escape the heat and hide from predators. When some are foraging, there's always one standing guard high above. The dark fur around its eyes helps reduce glare, allowing it to easily spot the shadows of predatory birds against the harsh sky. During the dry season, there is almost no water, but ground squirrels rarely need to drink directly. They extract moisture from their food, insects, spiders, larvae, and even scorpions. A dangerous prey whose venom they are much more resistant to than other creatures. A movement from above, a strange shadow on the ground. An alarm sounds, and in an instant, the entire pack disappears underground. For ground squirrels, sound is more than just a warning. That's what allows the whole team to react at the same time before danger gets close. They also know when to survive. Early morning, late afternoon, when the sun is high and the sand begins to heat up, the entire group retreats to cooler tunnels below. Not large or strong, ground squirrels survive through vigilance, discipline, and collective spirit. In the arid lands of Africa, survival doesn't belong to the strongest. But to those who watch over each other. But on the dry savanna, survival never exists alone. Some species survive thanks to the entire group. And some, in saving themselves, inadvertently create opportunities for others to survive. Until now, the savanna seemed to only know how to take. The dry season drains away water, exhausts strength, and eliminates the weakest. But amidst this harsh landscape, there is a species that not only fights for its own survival, also quietly creates opportunities for many others to survive. That is the African elephant. When water disappears from the surface and riverbeds dry up into cracked fissures, most species are helpless. But elephants possess a weapon few others have: memory. Through many dry seasons, adult elephants memorize the locations of old rivers, areas that once held water. Places where, beneath the dry sand, the last vestiges of moisture are still hidden. This experience is learned within the herd through repeated journeys over generations. During the dry season, it becomes a map guiding the entire herd to survival. Finding the right place, the elephant begins to dig. They used their feet, trunks, and tusks to dig deep into the seemingly dead riverbed until water seeped up from beneath the dry soil. For a giant creature needing a huge amount of water each day, this was a matter of survival. But the real miracle only began after the elephants left. Because the holes the elephants left didn't dry up immediately. Water continued to accumulate in the soil they had dug, trapped even in the giant footprints deeply embedded in the mud. And then, one by one, the species arrived. Antelopes bent down to drink where, just hours before, they couldn't reach. Birds swooped down to the water's edge. Baboons and warthogs followed the elephant's tracks. An act of self-preservation inadvertently became a source of life for many other creatures. That's why elephants are considered one of the ecosystem's engineers. A species capable of shaping its surrounding environment. In the dry season, when everything seems to revolve around struggle and loss, elephants remind the savannah of a forgotten truth. In nature, the life of one species is always intertwined with the life of another. But those small water holes cannot last forever. As the sun continues to burn, all remaining water sources begin to shrink, thicken, and become a new threat. Around the last remaining water holes, animals gradually weaken. Not from hunger, not from predators, but from the very thing they seek to survive. Water was once a lifeline. Now it begins to become a trap. Exposed to the sun for days, stagnant water becomes a breeding ground for bacteria and parasites. And the shallower the pool, the more concentrated everything in it, bacteria, waste, pathogens, becomes. The very water that keeps them alive becomes more dangerous precisely when they need it most. Thirst forces all species to gather in one place. The more crowded the animals are, the easier it is for disease to spread. A small scratch from a thorn or from a collision within the herd when in contact with contaminated water can quickly become infected. And so, many animals silently wither away. They succumb to an enemy without fangs, claws, and that cannot be seen. In the dry season, water is no longer clean. It both sustains and threatens. In the African savanna, even a sip of water is a gamble for survival. But then, even those stagnant pools will dry up. When water is scarce, every step to find water becomes more precious. In the dry season, survival isn't always about action. Sometimes it's about knowing when to stand still. The dry season doesn't just change where animals go. It changes when they are allowed to live. When the sun reaches its zenith, the heat can become an equally dangerous enemy as hunger and thirst. Every movement under the sun causes the body to dehydrate more quickly. And deplete already scarce energy. Therefore, during the hottest part of the day, many species choose to do nothing. At midday, the savanna is almost motionless. The ground trembles in the heat, and life falls silent, waiting. Lions lie stretched out, panting in the shade of trees, conserving their energy for the cooler hours ahead. Because they understand that hunting in the intense heat is too costly a trade-off. Mouses retreat deep underground, hiding from both the heat and their enemies. Under the murky water, crocodiles remain motionless. As cold-blooded animals, they can lie there for hours, even days, expending very little energy. Meanwhile, herds of herbivores stand still in the sun, patiently waiting for the light to fade before continuing their journey. This is a silent form of survival, rarely seen with the naked eye. Not everyone who survives is faster, a better hunter, or a stronger fighter. In the dry season, sometimes the survivor is simply the one who knows how to conserve energy. A single misstep can deplete energy that the body cannot easily recover. But as the sun sets, the savanna begins to move. The herds of herbivores continue their journey towards the remaining water sources. And there, the most patient ambushers have been waiting for a long time. The crocodiles don't need to chase the migration. They just need to remember where the migration must take. In the dry season, rivers with remaining water become an unavoidable gateway. For the wildebeest herd, the other side might hold hope: greener grass, softer soil, a chance to survive a few more days. But to reach it, they must step into the murky water. The river wasn't wide. It didn't flow swiftly. It didn't seem dangerous. The water's surface was as still as a dark brown mirror, without a ripple, without a sign of life. But in Africa during the dry season, that very silence is the most terrifying thing. Beneath the muddy water, crocodiles lay motionless. Their bodies were covered in mud, almost completely submerged. Only their eyes and nostrils protruded like harmless pieces of driftwood. Being cold-blooded, crocodiles don't need to hunt relentlessly like lions or hyenas. They can reduce all movement, conserve energy, and wait for their prey to walk right into their jaws. That's their strategy. No rush, no revealing themselves. Don't waste energy when it's not necessary. On the bank, the herd of wildebeest crowded together. The one behind pushed the one in front. The one in front hesitated before the water. None wanted to go first, but the whole herd couldn't stand there forever either. Behind them was the dry season. In front was the river, and instinct forced them to choose. Then one plunged in. That single movement was enough to shatter everything. The water exploded. Hundreds of bodies fell into the river at once. Hoofs stirred the mud into a thick, murky cloud. The splashing water, gasping breaths, and panicked cries mingled together. In that chaos, the crocodiles didn't need to choose much. They just needed to choose correctly. A short plunge, a lightning-fast bite. Their enormous jaws closed, and a wildebeest disappeared beneath the murky water. But the rest of the herd didn't stop. They continued swimming, still trying to climb to the other side of the river. Their bodies trembled, covered in mud, but they didn't look back. In a migration, stopping out of fear could mean death. As the last of them escaped the water, the river gradually returned to its original stillness. The mud settled, the surface closed. The crocodiles sank back into motionlessness, as if nothing had happened. The river crossing lasted only a few minutes, but its price would follow the entire herd for the rest of the journey. They continued towards where instinct told them the grass might still be green. Nothing was guaranteed. Only one thing was certain. Behind them, the dry season still reigned supreme on the savannah. And not all the dangers of the dry season lay beneath the water. As the herd left the river, the land before them remained dry and crisp in the sun. Some threats come and go in minutes. Wildfires are one of them. When the moisture disappears and the grasslands become dry and brittle in the sun, a single spark can ignite an entire prairie. The flames sweep through the grass, bushes, and open spaces. Leaving behind a blackened landscape and a lingering smell of smoke. What is burned is not just the grass, but a part of life itself. Shelter disappears. Food sources are wiped out. Familiar migration routes are cut off. Animals are forced to leave their old territories, venturing into unfamiliar lands. Where competition is fiercer and danger is greater. The smallest species pay the price first. They don't run fast enough to escape the fire. Nor do they have the strength to cross the charred open spaces left behind by the blaze. But even the larger species are not immune to that pressure. As habitats continue to shrink, the stress that follows the fire silently weakens even the seemingly strongest creatures. And even when the fire is out, the grassland cannot immediately regenerate. It takes many rainy seasons for the grass to grow back thick enough. During that time, the ecosystem operates in a state of disharmony, deficiency, and fragility more than usual. When wildfires coincide with prolonged droughts, the dry season is no longer just a seasonal challenge. It becomes an increasingly severe pressure on life. But if habitats continue to be burned and fragmented, migrations, shelters, and even the familiar sounds of the steppe may never be the same again. Nevertheless, in the natural rhythm of the steppe, the end of the dry season is not always the end. For months during the dry season, the steppe looks dead. But it never truly dies. It is only waiting. Beneath the cracked earth, beneath the ash left behind by the fires, roots and seeds silently survive, holding their breath, waiting for a single signal. Then That signal arrives. From the horizon, thick clouds gather, shading the harsh sunlight and softening the dry winds that have dominated this land for months. The first raindrops of the season touch the cracked earth and a scent rises, the smell of earth after the rain. The smell that science calls petrichor is created when water releases compounds found in dry soil, including geosmin from soil microorganisms. For the steppe, it's like an alarm clock. Just a few days later, tender green grass sprouts, growing straight up from the very ashes. Life returns everywhere. Animals return to their familiar lands. Their bodies recover, herds disperse across the new pastures. For a period, the urgency of survival gives way to the rhythm of growth and reproduction. Many species choose this green season to give birth, when food is more abundant and the chances of survival for the new generation are higher. Because the dry season is never the end. It's only half of a cycle that has been revolving for millions of years. And the rains don't create steppes. They only awaken it. But to be awakened, the savanna must remain intact enough to revive. Imagine a silent savanna. No more pounding hooves, no more calls echoing across the grassland. Only silence, and that is the most terrifying warning. For millions of years, the savanna's cycle has always closed itself after each dry season. But today, that is no longer guaranteed. Climate change, habitat destruction, and pressure from humans are making the dry season longer and harsher, leaving ever deeper wounds in the ecosystem. Because Africa is not just a land of spectacular hunts or majestic migratory herds. It is a living machine where each species is a link, from leopards and lions to crocodiles, vultures and ground squirrels, each playing an irreplaceable role. Removing one link can slow down or stop the entire machine. In Asia, when vultures nearly disappear due to a pesticide used for livestock, animal carcasses piled up and disease spread, a warning that resonated with humanity. So protecting nature doesn't mean controlling it. It means stepping back, letting it operate on its own, preventing wildfires, keeping water sources clean. It has never needed us to operate it.